I'm sure as everyone can imagine, it was a rather frustrating morning on Saturday. We were about 3 minutes from walking out of the hotel. We were 50 miles from our destination. I felt like our team was in a good spot. We had a good week of practice. All the boxes had been checked to that moment. And then, unfortunately, things you can't control take over, and we have to adjust on the fly, just like we have over the course of the last 10 months or so. The guys I feel the worst for are our players. We've had, the few seniors we have that decided to come back for the spring. They came back with the intentions of playing as many games as they could. And unfortunately, Saturday morning felt a lot like August 4th or whatever it is when our kids walked into the locker room and found out we didn't have a season or didn't have a conference game or conference schedule. And so my number one concern and I've told our players, I've told their parents this because I've had numerous conversations with them via Zoom or whatever platform we might be using, is the health and safety of their children, of their sons, and it'll continue to be that as we move forward. Looking forward to getting to connect with them today. I've had a wide number of them in the office already today. Looking forward to this week. So I'll open it up for questions.
Kind of the next steps for you guys, team-wise, as far as, the contact tracing, things like that, kind of what do you know is the next few steps going forward?
We got to make sure that we're as healthy as we can and eliminate any possible hot spots or issues that can come back and nip us later in the week. So really just taking it minute by minute and trying to be as proactive as we can and be as honest with our team about where we're at and what we have going forward.
Separate the positive tests after you found out?
We have a questionnaire every morning that all our players are required to fill out, and so I'm anticipating he was in his hotel room, filled it out, said he had symptoms, and so he essentially had already self-isolated because he was in his hotel room, and at that point we kept him there as the rest of the team. We were able to get the rest of the team on the buses, and then we were able to get them back to Fargo via different transportation.
You'll have guys missing this week because of COVID?
Sure, yeah. We've had some, well, of course, the guys who tested positive this Saturday, we're going to be missing them. And any other contact tracing that we are involved with, and then there's always the opportunity, as Mike, as you would know, we could have another positive test. I get the guys for a maximum of 4 hours a day, 20 hours a week. What they do in the other 148 hours during the week, just like I know you have college-age kids, I know Jeff does, I know I'm getting close. You hope to educate them, and you hope to give them enough information so they make the right decisions when they're not around you.
Are you concerned about like a position group being affected? Because that was one of the concerns, that we're all talking about last fall, was a whole position group get wiped out.
You're always concerned about that. Yeah, all of a sudden you look like you have enough bodies, but if you don't have enough bodies in a particular position group or unit, it becomes extremely difficult to play. You can't move a fifth-string punter to three technique.
5 minutes into this, we haven't even talked football. Is that just kind of the state of affairs these days?
Frustrating, isn't it? I was looking forward to talking about a big win over South Dakota. That's what I was anticipating. We were in a good spot, and I know I probably was ready for that game. I love Coach Nielsen, but I also love to play against him because I know he's going to do a great job.
Talked about talking to parents this week. What were those conversations like? And did anybody bring up anything about maybe it's not worth it anymore?
Have not heard anything like that from any of our parents. I haven't had a conversation with the group yet this week. Probably have them about every other week, every 3 weeks, just trying to keep them informed of what's going on, kind of some of the new protocols that are happening here at NDSU, so that way no one's ever surprised or caught off guard. I haven't heard anything. Our parents have been unbelievably supportive of me and our staff along this whole process, knowing that it's not easy, and there sure as heck isn't a blueprint or a how-to book on how to handle this.
You'll ever look back on this and
Write a book?
Realize that it made you a better coach, or that you'll be thankful for going through this? Or have you experienced anything that you think maybe has made you a better person or a better coach through this?
too early to answer. I probably need to coach more games first. So I don't mean to avoid the question, but I'm not going to talk about me right now.
Level of concern for you guys for, next Saturday's game, or this Saturday's
There's
game?
been a level of concern every week. I mean, I don't sleep very well on Wednesday nights because that's the day we test, and and all day you're on eggshells because you're waiting for results, and unfortunately the results come back about one at a time, and so there's not a great way. You don't get the hey, we're clear until they're all in, and so you may start getting feedback about 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon or in the middle of practice, and you don't know until after practice, and that's good. Go back to the fall. It was 4 or 5 days before we knew what was going on sometimes. So I mean, things are much improved now, but it's still a sticky situation.
Matt, does your practice routine change much from this than from what you have the last month?
Oh, I think it'll have to probably a little bit depending on some other information that we're waiting on right now. But you can't practice like the Bison typically do if you don't have the numbers to do it.
So it would be after Wednesdays when we'd find out if there's,
Well, we're gonna test 4 times this week, so we're gonna test on Friday as well. So I guess I won't sleep very well any nights this week.
Can I ask you a question about the Jackrabbits?
Sure.
Tell me what you think about them.
I think they're playing really well. I'm sure, knowing Coach down, they always play extremely hard, and you can see that on film. They have some veteran leadership on the offensive line. They have some continuity. I think they probably have as good a back in FCS football in Pierre Strong that you're going to see. Great acceleration, physical, finishes runs. Their quarterback does some really nice things. He can spin it. They operate some quarterback run game through him. They're full of trade shifted motions. They're going to try to get your eyes crossed. They're going to try to get people out of position. For instance, they're going to try to get Jasir in the box and be a box defender. They're going to try to get a guy like James Kaiser out of the box and be in space. They're going to trade tight ends and try to get you just out of sorts a little bit defensively. From a defensive side, 4 down, they play really hard. They play a lot of people. They may not have the big names that you remember from a year ago, but they're really solid. I think they're pretty dang good in the back end. I think they got some safeties that'll come down and strike you. I think they fly around at linebacker. You see them play 4 or 5 guys. Backhouse is still, it's a field over defense. I mean, he's always going to be to the field. He does a great job. He's got length. He's got speed. But he's been starting now. I'd hate to guess, but this might be his 4th year, at least 3rd year being a starter. He shows up, and you'd hope those guys would show up. So it's going to be a very difficult challenge for us.
Dakota marker week?
I haven't even, no, not at this time, because there's been so many other things that have probably preoccupied my mind.
Status.
He's was running around a little bit last week, and we'll see. I apologize, Jeff. The last thing I've thought about is asking about the other injuries that we have. My mind's been on some of the testing protocols and things, but I think we'll get him back at some point. I just don't know when that'll be.
More serious than that, so you kind of relieved that he's possibly back?
Well, for sure. Anytime it's not an ACL, and so that was concern number one. Anytime you have a knee injury, that's, you hate to be negative, but that's where your mind goes right away. But it was not an ACL, and our medical people have done a great job of identifying the issue, and hopefully we can move on and get him better. But I know he's been in the training room a lot, and having this extra time will benefit him as we move forward.
do you expect you're going to have starters out because of COVID? Can you,
It sure could be a possibility.
something, you talk about having to make adjustments, but you're going to have to make some late adjustments then. Right?
Every week there's that chance of late adjustments. Yeah, that's why that Wednesday, getting those results back in a timely manner is so critical, because if you get them back, say 4 o'clock in the afternoon, at least then you can make adjustments and still get Wednesday, Thursday practice in with the adjusted lineup or whatever it might be. So timing is of the essence with all of this.
Coach, we have a question online from Eric Peterson. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, if Kobe can't play on Saturday, are you worried about, the depth at running back? I know we've talked about this. Is that a position group where you may need to make some adjustments if he's unavailable to play on Saturday?
Well, we would have the same numbers that were available last week, so it wouldn't be any different. The same people that dressed for South Dakota would be available. We took Nathan Goldaddy, freshman from West Fargo Cheyenne, as a fifth running back for us last week. So we felt like we had enough bodies, and so we're comfortable at that spot right now.
Yeah, I guess you brought up Nathan Goldaddy and TK Marshall. How close are those guys to a point where you feel comfortable where they could get game reps, or where are those two at right now?
And unfortunately, if we'd have played on Saturday, you wouldn't even have to ask that question. So both of them were, TK was part of the game plan. Nathan's coming back from an injury, and so we're kind of taking it a little bit slow. He just got back to practice late last week. He was more in case if something happened that we needed someone that could finish out a game or just run inside zone with.
Yeah, I guess is that one of the, obviously you want to play every week, but getting a chance to get some younger guys in games, is that one of the biggest byproducts of not getting a game in like you missed last Saturday?
Well, yes and no. Of course, there's always guys you want to get more reps to, but there's probably some guys also that not having 50, 60 snaps of football will help them physically as well.
Just James Caja, you brought him up early, but what's the impact he's had this spring? He's made the complete transition from safety to outside linebacker. What have you liked from his play this spring and his transition overall?
Well, I think he plays extremely fast. He's a very smart football player. Has really, as you mentioned, transitioned very well into the position. Understands football. I think going from strong safety to will in a lot of our sub packages, those two pieces of what we do defensively were intertwined based on run fit and coverage. So we probably had an unfair advantage when he made the move to will, because he was always playing behind the will. So he had a pretty good understanding of how the puzzle all worked and fit together. Has done a really nice job of helping Luke Wirtz when Luke was out there with the communication piece. And that's something, I go back to 2014, 2015. A guy like Carlton Littlejohn had to do the same thing for a young Nick DeLuca when he had his opportunity to get in there, or MJ Stump had to do it for, another young players, a young Matt Plank or someone that might have had to play for us. So he's done a great job of being a leader, great job of communicating some of our adjustments on field, and always expect big things out of James. He's a very humble, hungry player at the same time.
And just finally, you maybe talked about it earlier, but how much stress has all the testing added, and how much stress do you think it's added to the players' plate? Where, have you thought more about testing than football, or a lot less about football this spring than any other season, I would guess?
I don't know if I can quantify that. I do know that there's been a lot more stress on our players going all the way back to roughly a little over a year ago. I think numerous reasons, lack of routine. I think when you took football away from a lot of these young men, unfortunately, who they are is associated with being a really good football player. And when all of a sudden you take away that, I think that causes some issues. We've dealt with some of that as we've navigated through the last 12 months, trying to make sure that we're taking care of our players in a mental and physical capacity, making sure they're in a good spot, making sure we have that open line of communication, not only with them, but also with their parents. There's a lot of things that I don't think we'll ever know, probably as a coach, because if I test positive, the game's going to happen. They're going to, my work's done on Saturday. But a lot of these kids, it's no different than performance anxiety. Now it's testing anxiety. You think they want to be the guy who allows us not to play, or the guy, or the cause, or all of a sudden now our roster's fractured because I tested positive? I guarantee you, as competitive as our kids are, they put a tremendous amount of stress on them every week when they have to go through these tests.
Thank you.
Coach, your next question is from Dom Izzo. Dom?
Matt, what's your, I guess, level of worry seeing two other teams opt out today about this season even getting to the finish line?
I've always probably had a little bit of concern, Dom, going all the way back to the fall. I know Matt's here right now. I advocated to play in the fall. I thought no time better. Right now means everything. Let's get it going. And unfortunately, there was a number of other schools in our league that didn't want to do that. And so we addressed it by playing one game in the fall, and here we are. And I've had a concern ever since, just because of the unknown. No one's gone through this. There is no blueprint. There is no owner's manual of how you're supposed to operate through a pandemic. And like I said before, you try to give your kids enough information that they'll make the appropriate decisions, but that doesn't mean that 18 to 22-year-olds are going to listen to you. It's just, you got to keep talking to them about being smart, making good decisions, and making sure they know where they're at all times.
I know you have been obviously dealing with reality of what's going on outside the football walls, but when this happened Saturday, did that kind of hit home that hey, we're trying to play football, but this is still real, we're still dealing with this?
Of course it did. It was one of the things that we never wanted to happen. I understand where football kind of sits at NDSU. It's an extremely important piece of our university. And, the last thing I wanted to see was for our players not to have an opportunity. They put a lot of time and effort. And not just last week, but over the course of the last year, over the course of their career. I think of guys like Cole Jacob and Garrett Wegner, Ross Kennelly, guys who have yet to make that final decision if they're coming back in the fall. And what I hope doesn't happen is they just get maxed out on the frustration and just are to the point where I'm tired of worrying about this anymore. I'm not playing. We've already lost guys like Aaron Mercadell is a great example. Got his heart tore out in the fall and never came back. And I hope he doesn't look poorly upon NDSU now because we didn't play. Not that we could control it, but all of a sudden football was taken from him and it was frustrating. It crushed him.
Thanks.
Any other questions here in the room?
Matt, with North Dakota now this week opening to 16 and over, is that a conversation, vaccine I'm talking about, is that a conversation you have to have with parents and players?
We have had some brief conversations with our players, not in depth. I just got kind of all that information late last week, and the last thing I wanted to do was bring up something that wasn't going to happen until a week later. Just another thing to make them clutter their mind. Let's keep the main thing. For just a little minute or a couple minutes if we can. We'll have a conversation today at our team meeting, roughly at 3:30. We'll address it. We'll give them all the tools and all the access to where and when and how they can get a vaccine here on campus. I've had a fair number of players come in and ask me what I thought. And again, you're put in a unique situation. That's a mom and dad conversation. But when I recruited them, I said I'd be there and try to give them the best information I can. It's hard because there's a lot of information out there, and unfortunately, our kids get most of it from social media, and as you guys realize, that seldom is the most accurate.
Talked about it, players' anxieties and nerves. How hard is it to help them deal with that when, like you said, there are nights where you can't sleep because of your own nerves?
Well, just try to find ways to connect with them. Want to get them around their team as much as they can, and that's a tough in itself. We have a team meal once a week, and it's to go. Just the ability to sit and have food and fellowship as a football team has been limited. And so trying to give them all the resources on campus for when they do feel like the stress of academics, the stress of COVID, people back home, football, all that becomes too much, that at least they have an outlet somewhere that they can visit, or at least people they can contact.
Spring worth it? You've spent this entire press conference talking about stress and mental health for the kids.
It's been worth it. If you come up in the there's days I'm really excited about where I'm frustrated today because I can't control it. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not very good when my plan has to be altered. I'm not a good person to deal with. I'm extremely probably type A in that regard. And so you just ask Brenda, she would tell you, if it's not my way or the way I thought it was supposed to look, I struggle with that. And so that's probably why I struggle a little bit today or on Saturday, just because I couldn't fix it. Maybe I just how I am. If you don't like the way it is, then fix it. It's on you. But this is one of those scenarios that I can't fix it. So just kind of up to the people that make the decisions, and we'll move forward. But has it been worth it? Going back to your question, yes. We've gotten better. We've gotten better as a team. We've gotten closer as a football team. We've gotten better on the field. I'd be lying to you if I said I can't wait for the fall, because I do think we have the possibility of being a really solid football team.
Jackson Hankey, what's his status? Is he?
You're going to find out today.
Okay.
So he was with us on the trip.
Is he supposed to play last Saturday?
We had his bag with him, so it was going to be kind of a game time deal.